by Hari Ravikumar. Alpha Arvind ran to the sports room as soon as the history class was over. He found the usual suspects, Sigma Samuel, Lambda Lakshmikant and Upsilon Unnikrishnan. Lambda and Sigma were playing a game of chess while Unni was reading his grandfather's copy of Chess Fundamentals by Jose Capablanca. "You guys play so much chess, do you even keep track of whether you're improving or not?" asked Alpha as he plonked himself on the plastic chair next to Sigma. "Of course," said Sigma. "Till last week, Lambda could never defeat Unni, but yesterday he beat him twice." "That's not a good measure. Do you guys analyze your game after it's done?" "How the hell are we supposed to do that?" asked Lambda. Unni kept his book away and said, "You notate the game, Dumbo." "Notate the game? What are you talking about?" asked Sigma with a puzzled look. "Yes, Unni's right," said Alpha. "You should notate your game so that you can analyze it later." "And how do we do that?" asked Lambda. "Let me show you, fellas. Come here." Alpha pulled the table closer to him and arranged all the pieces on the chessboard just as it would be at the start of a game. "Now, let's say Sigma's playing with the white pieces and you, Lambda, are playing with the black pieces, okay?" "All right. Now, Sigma, what is the square at the bottom left for you?" It's a black square," said Sigma. "Precisely. Let's call that square A1. And what's on that square?" "My rook." "Yes, your rook. And what's next to the rook?" "My knight." "Good. Now let's call that square B1. Then the bishop is on square C1? asked Lambda. "Yes, and the queen is on D1. The king is on E1. "I get it. So it's a bishop on F1, a knight on G1, and my other rook on H1. Unni smiled at the excitement. He said, "Yes, that is the first row, so all the squares will have a 1 attached to it." "Now, can you guess the names of the squares on which the white pawns are standing?" asked Alpha. Sigma almost pounced on him with the answer, I know, it's so simple. The pawns are on the second row, so they will be on squares A2, B2, C2, D2, E2, F2, G2 and H2. "Not bad, kiddo, you're right." Now Lambda looked at his pieces and said, "Okay, now let me take a guess at the names of my squares." "Dude, they may be your pieces, but I can assure you that the squares belong to no one." "Okay, wise guy. Let me guess the names of the squares on which my pieces stand. The pawns are on row 7, so they will be A7 to H7. And the other pieces are on row 8, so they will be A8 to H8. Bingo! That's the first part of the notation. Now you will have to learn how to write down your moves. "Okay, Alpha, before we get there, why do we give a name to every square?" asked Lambda. "Well, that's because we want to precisely identify the place. If I asked you where your king was, would you say, 'It's near me' or something vague like that? You would say it's on square E8, and everyone in the universe will understand where that piece is." "What do you mean?" asked Alpha. "Let's say there was this superhuman chessboard that had 100 squares by 100 squares. So instead of 64 squares, it had 10,000 squares. Would this notation still work?" "No, this one won't work because there are only 26 letters in English. But we could use another system that uses numbers for both rows and columns." "Come on, if you say it's on square 111, is it on the first row and the 11th column or the 11th row and the first column? How can we be precise with such a system?" "You don't have to be a Ramanujan to figure this out, dude. Just introduce a marker in between, 1-1 or 1, 1. So if your piece is on the 100th row and the 7th column, the name of that square will be 100, 7. As simple as that." "Hey, that's smart, Alpha. In fact, if we use your idea, we could potentially have an infinitely big chessboard with infinite rows and infinite columns and still be able to precisely identify a square." "Yes, absolutely. In fact, this is how places are identified on maps. Did you know?" Take the atlas and see a page. There will be horizontal and vertical lines. Yes, Alpha, we know that. They're called latitudes and longitudes, said Sigma. Okay, is latitude horizontal or vertical? Yikes, I always get confused with that. Lambda, do you know? Yes, latitudes are horizontal and longitudes are vertical. Correct, Lambda. So now tell me, how do you remember it? Asked Alpha. Very simple. Take out the etude from both and you get lat and long. Now, lat rhymes with flat and long rhymes with oblong. That's how I remember it. Rather convoluted but pretty cool. So anyway, these lat longs are just doing the same thing. They divide the earth into zones so that you can exactly identify a place. Unni looked at Alpha and said, but lat-long coordinates aren't enough to precisely identify a place, are they? Well, obviously you also need the altitude of the place. The world is three-dimensional, remember? Alpha, you're a brilliant fellow, man. The reason why we need just rows and columns for a chessboard is because it's two-dimensional. Now, I was wondering how it would be if chess was played in 3 dimensions. This story aims to introduce coordinate geometry, a beautiful branch of mathematics that stands at the intersection of arithmetic, algebra, and geometry. We use CG in our daily lives whenever we want to pinpoint the location of something. Here are some examples. Graphic designers often have to locate a precise point on a page. How do they do that? CG. While preparing an atlas, cartographers have to use a system of coordinates. That's CG. When traders draw their graphs of the stock market, they're definitely using CG. This illustrated story video is brought to you by Ever After Learning, a storytelling company run by Deepta and Nisha. At Ever After, we create story-based tools for a variety of learning needs. This video is part of a series called Ever After Shorts. We hope you found this video useful and enjoyable, and if you did, please share it and do subscribe to our channel. Mail us for comments, questions, and feedback. We'd love to hear from you.